So this video is going to be a supplemental to the actual 5.15 video. I realized there was kind of a step up in difficulty that I didn't explain very well prior to the 5.15 video. So this one will kind of be a step before the 5.15 stuff, and we're going to talk about completing the square and a couple extra scenarios. So first, let's do completing the square. We've done problems like this. We have this function, and we want to find the vertex because vertexes are important for a lot of these quadratic functions. So we need to change this function into something that looks like this. And the completing the square part has to do with creating this thing that's perfectly squared. All right, so that's why we call it completing the square, because we're trying to find this term, this kind of compound term, x minus h, and that whole thing is squared. All right, and we had to do this process a lot when we're trying to find the vertex, because now the vertex of this is just h comma k. And the steps that we have look something like this. So if we had x squared minus 8x plus 3, we're going to take the b value. Just remember, b is the number in front of x. So in this case, b is negative 8. We're going to divide that number by 2 and get negative 4. We're going to square that number, so negative 4 squared is 16. All right, so 16 is this important number that we have, and now our equation, we still have the original parts, but now we need to add 16 to complete the square. And since we added 16 to our equation, that would give us a different equation, because you can't just add 16, so we're also going to subtract 16. So if you just look at those two blue parts, we added 16 and subtracted 16, that's 0. So we didn't change the problem at all. But now what we're going to do, we added the 16 for a reason, because now these first 3 terms are going to combine and the second 2 terms are going to combine. So those first 3 terms are going to combine to x minus 4 squared, and the last 2 terms are going to be minus 13. All right, so now we know the vertex is positive 4, negative 13. All right, just a couple of things that some people are making a mistake on. When I have my b as negative 8, when I divide as negative 4, so that negative sign is going to go in there. All right, so that's important to know, the negative sign. If this was plus 8, then there'd be a plus 4 in the parentheses there. All right, so this is what we've done for completing the square. All right, you're taking that number, dividing by 2 and squaring it, and that tells you that number here that you have to add in order to complete the square. All right, what we're going to do in this video is just one extra step, and pretty much every problem we've had so far where we've done completing the square has been x squared plus something and something else. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add a number in front of the x squared, and it's basically just going to give us 2 extra steps out to do. There'll be 1 step at the beginning and 1 step at the end. But the basic idea is you can't do completing the square unless there's just a 1 or nothing in front of the x squared. All right, so we'll have to figure out how to do that in this video. But the basic idea is that the first step, the only different thing is you're going to factor out that value. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this negative 2, and I'm going to pull it out of there, but I had to do it from all of the numbers. So I'm pulling out a negative 2 from all of these. So now my function is going to look like, I'm going to have this negative 2 at the front. I've done factoring before. If I get rid of the negative 2 in the first term, now I'm just going to have a positive x squared. All right, I'm taking out a negative 2 from here. Basically, you're dividing out negative 2, so negative 12 divided by negative 2 is going to be positive 6. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. All right, so we take this negative 2 and kind of divide it out from everything and put it in the front there. And if you look at what's in the parentheses, that's exactly the type of completing the square problem that we've had before. All right, so you can choose whether to do this in one kind of line. I'm going to do it for the example in kind of a separate thing. So just this x squared plus 6x plus 2. All right, that's a completing the square problem we could have done before. So now we take b as 6. We divide it by 2, and we get 3. We square it, and we get 9. So now we know 9 is the value we need to add. But again, we're going with a function. That also means we subtract it at the end too. That way we didn't actually change the function I'm talking about. but the first three values are going to combine to give me one thing, and the second two values are going to combine to give me something else. So the first two are going to become x plus 3 squared. And again, this 3 is coming from there. And then 2 minus 9 is minus 7. All right, so that part, x squared plus 6x plus 2 is the same thing as x plus 3 squared minus 7. So what I'm going to do is take this answer and replace that with it, because these two things are equal to each other, but one has completed the square. So now my function is going to look like this. Negative 2 is still hanging out there. And then we have this big parentheses. Inside the parentheses is this thing, x plus 3 squared minus 7. All right, so one confusing thing is there's two sets of parentheses. All right, but this big parentheses, I just basically copied again. And the little parentheses is coming from the thing over here. And now what I need to do is take negative 2 and distribute it in. So there's two different terms here. There's this big term being squared and the smaller negative 7. All right, but this needs to distribute into both of these. All right, so my final answer is going to look like we get negative 2 times this thing being squared. Well, I'll just write that like this. All right, I can't combine the negative 2 into there because of an order of operations thing. So the negative 2 just sits in front of there. But I can do negative 2 times negative 7. That gives me plus 14. And so now I know the vertex of this original quadratic I started over here is now negative 3, positive 14. All right, so it's one extra step at the beginning of factoring this number out, and one extra step at the end of distributing this number back into those pieces. All right, in the middle, it's still the same, completing the square we did earlier in this video and in earlier learning objectives. All right, so I'll do one more example. This one I'll do it as like kind of one continuous thing just to show you another way you can write it. All right, but the first thing is we're going to have to get rid of this 3. So we're pulling a 3 out. So we do 3x, or let's put the 3 at the front. 3x squared divided by 3 is just x squared. 30x divided by 3 is plus 10x. Negative 2 divided by 3 is negative 2/3. All right, that one doesn't come out nicely because 2 is not easily divisible by 3. But now we have to do completing the square of the thing in the parentheses. All right, so b is 10. We divide that by 2 and we get 5. We square that and we get 25. So 25 is the thing I need to add. And again, I'm doing it just to the stuff on the inside. This 3 is just going to stay there into the very end. So just on the inside of this parentheses. And I have to add 25. Right, to that part to complete the square, but because I added 25, I also have to subtract 25. And then again, the whole reason is these 3 terms here are going to combine, and these 2 terms here are going to combine. Right, so I'm going to get, this 3 is still just hanging out. Those first 3 are going to be x plus 5 squared. All right, the second 2, I did get a common denominator, 25 is the same thing as 75 over 3. So negative 2/3 minus 75 over 3 is going to be negative 77 over 3. And now the last step, so again, that middle step is all the completing the square part. Now the last step is, remember, this 3 is going to distribute into these 2 different parts. So when it multiplies by the first part, I just get 3 times x plus 5 squared. And multiply the second part, that 3 and the 3 in the denominator are going to cancel out, and I just get minus 77. All right, so my final answer for my vertex is negative 5, negative 77. All right, so just one extra step. This comes up from time to time when you have a number in front of your x squared. You still want to find the vertex, so you factor it out. You do completing the square all the way in the parentheses. Again, you can do it like the last example where you kind of do that to the side, or you can do it like in this example where you kind of keep it in the parentheses the whole time. In the end, you have to just remember you distribute this 3 back into the pieces that you had to get to your final answer. All right, so here's one you can try on your own. All right, this video is hosted on YouTube and not Edpuzzle, so it's not going to automatically pause it. So you can pause it now and try this one on your own. All right, here's the answer I got. So the first thing, again, there's a number in front of x squared, so you have to factor that out of everything. x squared divided by 4. So I'm pulling out this 4 because that's the number in front of x squared. 4x squared divided by 4 just gives me that 1 that I need. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. All right, so what I did in this case is I took this expression. That's the expression I can do complete in the square, so I rewrote it over here. And I did complete in the square, so the thing I end up adding is 4. And if I add it, then I also have to subtract it. And then I can factor those first 3 terms as our perfect square. The second 2 terms just combine. All right, so now I did complete in the square on this kind of simpler expression. But now I remember that this is the same as this, so I put it into the parentheses. Again, you're going to have these kind of double set of parentheses in this step. I distribute in. The 4 can't multiply by the x plus 2 because of the exponent, so I just write it in front of the x plus 2 squared. But 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. All right, this is the process when we have something other than just a 1 in front of x squared. If there's any other thing, if it's just a negative sign, if it's a 2, if it's whatever, I have to do this extra process of factoring out. Then you do completing the square on the simpler expression, and you put that number back in at the end. All right, so this process is going to come up a lot in the word problems because a lot of the word problems have to do with finding a maximum, which means your parabola looks like this. All right, whenever your parabola looks like this, you have a negative in front of the x squared. So your first step for all these ones where you have this negative in front of the x squared is factor the negative out. All right, and then you can do completing the square. All right, so you have to do this on the application problems, the word problems associated with quadratics. That's the actual focus of the 5.15 skill check. All right, so this was just kind of like an extra thing to kind of get you ready for that one. All right, but now you can actually do the word problems when you have like extra negatives or numbers in front of your x squared.